like to share with you for just a few minutes about transformational aspect of leadership, because obviously the leadership guru is here and he is going to continue to just pour out. Are you guys enjoying Dr. Maxwell? Are you learning a lot? He's going to continue to pour out to you, but I just wanted to very quickly deposit a quick little nugget about change and transformation. And that's one of the trickiest things oftentimes we have to contend with as people, because we oftentimes want to look externally and we're really good about change, but we think that the change should come from other people and other things. It reminds me of one of my favorite stories. Picture this. There's a man and a woman. They're married. They've been married for years. And he's in a coma in the hospital. He's been in a coma for months, and his wife has not left his side. And he starts to come out of the coma a bit and says, "Margaret, come a little closer. I want to speak with you." He says, "Margaret, I just want to tell you that when I lost my job, you were there for me. And when I lost my business, you were there for me. And when we lost our home, you were there for me. Martha, come even closer. I think you might be the problem. You're bad luck. I need a change." Because oftentimes we don't ever want to take ownership and responsibility for what needs to change. Now, Dr. Maxwell is talking and speaking about leadership, but the first life you have to lead is your own. And he's often said in his seminars that if you wouldn't follow yourself, who would? And as you think about starting to change, I went through a process when I actually wrote my book years ago. Went through the process. I just recently wrote the book. But I started thinking about the aspect of change and how it comes about. And I really, really wanted to get it. I said, how does this change thing work? Because change isn't easy for any of us. And I'm very practical. I like things to be able to be something I can relate to and really kind of give myself a real life example. So as I thought about change, I realized it all started in my mind. And that I needed to get my mind ready for change. And so I equated it to when a baby is born. How is a baby born? A baby is born head first. And if it's not scheduled to be born head first, there's a painful procedure that's done on the mother to turn the baby around to get it to come out head first. Well, why is that? Because if you can get the head out, everything else just follows. But you don't have to take my word for it. Are there any mothers in the room? Raise your hand if you are a mother. You gave a real... Would any of the mothers like to give testimony that what I'm saying is true? When you're giving birth, getting the head out is the hardest part. When you think about change, you've got to get your head out. Pull it out of the sand, pull it out of the darkness. Get your head out. Everything else will follow that. And so as you think about change, think about that. And think about, no, it's not easy, but I've got to get my mind equipped to handle the change. When I was a young girl, I grew up in a Christian home. When I was a young girl, I would always read the story of Moses and Pharaoh. In fact, I used to love, in the States during the Easter season, the Ten Commandments would come on television, and I'd watch it over and over again. That was one of my favorite movies. What I loved was the pomp and circumstance, but what it was the favorite part to me was Pharaoh and Moses going to Pharaoh to appeal to let the Israelites go and leave Egypt. And I always, as a child, focused on Pharaoh, this evil oppressor. But then, as an adult, when I started analyzing things and I started thinking about change and leadership and started speaking and coaching, I said, you know what's interesting? I re-looked at that story, and it occurred to me that the Israelites gave Moses more problems than Pharaoh did. How does that happen? That the very people you are trying to save, you are trying to help, and you are trying to lead give you more problems than an evil oppressor? Can you imagine as leaders that the people you are trying to help and lead would give you problems? Would that ever happen? Has anybody ever experienced that? And do you sometimes kind of think, maybe I'm just like Moses here. I'm trying my best to move them along, to get them to change. It's not happening because you know why? Pharaoh let them go. They left Egypt. Moses got them out of Egypt, but he didn't get Egypt out of them. They came with Egypt and kept it. And it's when you keep a mindset, when you refuse to change, when you keep Egypt within you, how are you going to change? Instead, you're going to complain. You're going to walk around for 40 years trying to figure it all out because Egypt hasn't come out. And so that's how you have to recognize that if I'm not willing to make the change, I'm keeping Egypt inside. Let me give you an example that's a little bit closer to home, because I like that. I like when stuff is practical and relatable. Changing the law is relatively easy. It's changing minds that's difficult. So if you think about South Africa, apartheid ended almost 20 years ago. The law was changed. Apartheid is over. But just like the Israelites, did you come out of apartheid but keep apartheid mentality in you? And are you ready to change that? Perhaps if you're white, are there any white people in here? If you're white, could you raise your hand, please? It's hard to tell here in South Africa because of, when you come from the West and you don't understand and your first experience in all of this and all of the different categories and classifications. I've been just about everything since I've been in South Africa, and I find it entertaining at best. But if you're white and you haven't let apartheid come out of you, do you still think in terms of exclusion and black incompetency and all of those type of things? Or if you're black, do you still have apartheid in you and you think in terms of limitations and what you can't do and what's not possible? And so as you seek to change, think about the examples that have been set and think about everything that you've experienced and what you're willing to do to make that change. And I recognize it's not easy. Your thoughts play a huge part in change and getting your mind right. The American Psychology Association, brilliant organization, very respected in the United States. They recently did a study and found that physiologically they can prove that for every thought that comes into your brain, you have 30 seconds before it becomes a feeling. 30 seconds. Think about that. Think about the span of 30 seconds, how quickly that can go by with a thought in your mind. So now, 30 seconds have gone by. If you had a negative thought, a thought that was resistant to change, a thought that was limiting, a thought that spoke to inability, after 30 seconds, now it's a feeling. Then what happens? Another 30 seconds, another negative thought, more negative feelings, and before you know it, you're paralyzed. You're paralyzed by it. And when you're paralyzed, then you start taking on fear of change, fear of something different, fear of something new. And when you're in a paralyzed state, you're not any good to anybody. And it actually prohibits growth. And we all know, because we've got Dr. Malapo, who wrote a fantastic book that told us, if you're not growing, you're dying. And so your thoughts are controlling all of that. And so I would encourage you to just practice it. Spend the next few days, a thought comes in, give yourself that 30 seconds and say, you know what, I'm getting it out. I am not going to let this thought begin to manifest where eventually I will end up paralyzed because of it. Now today you have a wonderful opportunity to hear about transformation, to hear about change, and most important, to hear about leadership from a man who is just been, what is in the 4th year in a row, he's been named the leadership guru of the world. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. There are people in the United States who never get to hear Dr. Maxwell. You're in East London on the other side of the ocean with an opportunity like this. And I would encourage you to really, really embrace it, because once-in-a-lifetime opportunities only come once in the lifetime of that opportunity. And you don't want to miss it. And it's great teaching, and it's great inspiration. But guess what? Inspiration should inspire change. It should inspire growth. Because you don't need inspiration to leave here and next week and next month do the same thing you've been doing. Think about this. How many parents in the room? Does anybody have children? I have a teenage son. Imagine if I spent 45 minutes to an hour every day encouraging and inspiring him to keep his curfew, or inspiring him to clean his room. That's just what he should be doing anyway. But when you are inspired, there should be a manifestation of the inspiration. Something should result in what you've been inspired to do. You've got great notes. Some of you will have CDs, DVDs, you'll get recordings of the sessions. But what good does all of that do if it doesn't manifest into a remarkable and noticeable difference? And so next year this time, East London should be full of people who have been inspired and made change and are now making a difference, because when you make change, that's how you begin to make a difference. And so I'd like to sum it all up for you with just this little story that my dad used to help me to understand life with. Picture this. You go in the kitchen, you get 3 pots, and you put them on to boil. In one pot, you put a carrot. In another pot, you put an egg. And in the 3rd pot, you put a coffee bean. You let them boil for a bit, and then turn them off. Scoop out the carrot. The carrot that went into the boiling water, hard and firm and strong, is now limp and soft and weak. The egg went in real fragile with a really fluid heart. Boiling water, now it's hard, and the heart is so hard it'll crumble. The coffee bean retained itself, and it changed its environment. I would encourage you as leaders to think, am I going to be a carrot? Am I going to be an egg? Or am I going to be a coffee bean? Because when you've had the opportunity to have an experience like a Dr. Malapo and a Dr. Maxwell, you should all go back to your respective places of business as coffee beans, where yes, there's difficulty. Yes, they may try and sabotage you. No, they may not always cooperate. No, the budgets aren't right. Yes, they always give you a hard time. It's boiling water being in leadership. But you're going to retain who you are, you're going to stay true to who you are, and you're going to change your environment. I thank you for your time, and I wish you well for the rest of the day. Enjoy.